What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know I like to play a lot of different types of games. From, of course, the obvious fantasy, horror, but one of my early favorites was Supers. That was one of the first types of RPGs I played beyond traditional D&D. And you know, I got to thinking about it this week, and I've played more than 15 different systems to run Supers RPGs. There's a lot out there. How do you make a choice about which one is right for you? So today I'm going to share my top 5 favorite Supers RPG systems. So we're going to find out which one is the world's finest. Without any further ado, let's get over to the table. If you are enjoying the content, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, check out the new channel members section for early access, exclusive content, and special member shoutouts. Lastly, if you want to see my free gaming content, discuss RPGs and nerd culture, or join a play-by-post game, take a look at the Discord channel where you'll find the greatest group of gamers in the multiverse.
Trust me, true believer.
Link in the description. Coming in at number 5 on my list is the Marvel Multiverse RPG by Matt Forbeck using the 616 system. This is the most recent of the entries on my list, and one reason for that is I wanted one of the games to be extremely accessible and easy to find at your local game store or your favorite online retailer. This system came out in 2023 and had a lot of buzz when it initially launched, but hasn't had nearly as much fanfare as of late. That said, there have been several releases for the game, and I found my time with the game to be very enjoyable. You can find a few of my videos on the channel discussing aspects such as character creation and even solo play. That said, today we're just going to talk about a few of the good things and bad things about this system and why it may or may not be the right game for you. First, the good. Number 1, it's a single die system. All you need to play this game are 3 6-sided dice. You need one of them to be a different color because that's the Marvel die, and it has special implications in gameplay. They use target numbers, similar to most D20 games, and the target numbers are typically based off of ability scores plus 10 points. Everything flows really well, it makes everything simple, and it plays very well at the table. Number 2, an updated roster. Because this is the newest game, it's also going to have the best representation of the most current versions of the heroes that you're going to be looking at. These are well done, and there's even multiple versions of some of them, just in case your favorite is different than somebody else's favorite. That said, you're probably going to find what you're looking for in these pages.
Let's do the list. Spider-Man.
Guilty.
The Incredible Hulk.
Afraid so.
Oh man, this is so cool. The X-Men.
Now that you mention it.
Number 3, a versatile character creation system. To create a character in the Marvel Multiverse RPG, you simply select a rank, which is kind of the power level of the character. That rank gives you a certain number of points to use on ability scores and powers, and there are even power sets, which are powers that go along together and allow you to get a discount to be able to fully realize the type of character that you're wanting to get at. The ability scores are melee, agility, resilience, vigilance, ego, and logic, cleverly spelling out Marvel. After getting your ability scores, you pick a backstory, pick your powers, and you are good to go. I found the system to be very effective at creating what I was looking to go for, and I think that it's an easy enough learn for newer players to pick up on as well. Now, the bad. Number 1, the system's simple, but it's not nearly as quick as some of the alternatives like the early TSR Marvel. That said, you can still have a lot of fun with this game, but you're not going to be making a lot of tactical choices, and it's still not going to run as quick as some of those more simple systems. Don't take this as a knock. Some people are going to like the simplicity, but there are other alternatives out there. Number 2, ranks effectively limit the usability of much of the roster in the book. The way the ranks even out is a rank 2 character should be relatively close to 2 rank 1 characters, and a rank 3 character should be close to the power level of 2 rank 2 characters, so on and so forth. So it's really hard to have a rank 2 character running in an adventure outside a rank 4 character because they're going to have completely different damage multipliers, and basically they're going to need to have a completely different roster of foes to fight. This is much different than many of the more wide open and somewhat abstracted versions of Super's RPGs, and I can see why the others went a different route with this. Number 3, sanitized presentation. This is a Disney production. It's Marvel. It's the new Marvel. So it doesn't have some of that grit, some of that classic feel that some of the other games in this list are going to have. If you want something that looks extremely commercial, this is a great choice. If you want something that is really going to remind you of your childhood and playing those games at the table 30 years ago, this is not going to be it. There's almost an uncanny valley feel to some of the character portrayals in this game because it was clear that they very much wanted to stick to their own character creation process to give the characters life and show that the system worked. Unfortunately, that means that they leave a lot of the elements of those characters on the cutting room floor, and that kind of leaves a bit of a stale taste in my mouth, at least. Coming in at number 4, we have the Marvel Superheroes RPG by Jeff Grubb and Steve Winter of TSR. This was my first Superheroes RPG, and as such holds a very special place in my heart, hence why I have an entire shelf of their product. This was released in the mid-80s, and I have done a full video breakdown of the system on the channel. If you want to hear more specifics, you can check that out. That said, for right now, let's just talk about some of the pros and cons, the good and the bad, of the Marvel Superheroes system. First, the good. Number 1. Extremely fast character creation. With a few random tables, you can have a character created in less than 5 minutes, and it's going to be something that is challenging but interesting, something you're going to want to play, and you'd love to see on the pages of a comic book. With the different releases subsequent to the basic set, there were multiple different methods to creating characters, with special character creation methods for sorcerers and magically enhanced characters in the realms of magic, and in the Powers supplement you get special rules for creating all manner of different characters. Also, the Advanced Heroes set is going to be different than the basic set for character creation. That said, all of them remain very quick, very easy to use, and very effective at what they're trying to do. One of the best things about this RPG is just sitting down and creating a stack of characters that you can use at your table, and that remains true today. Number 2, easy to play and to teach. My 6-year-old and I have played multiple sessions of this game, and he absolutely adored it, just as I did. The Marvel Superheroes RPG uses a simple chart system, whereas you roll a D100 and cross-reference the roll with your ability rank on the chart, and that determines how successful or unsuccessful you are. Everything is static, it's very quick and easy, and creates a very comic booky feel at the table without getting into a lot of minutia. True, if you add the advanced set maneuvers, you do get a little bit more of that choice and strategic feel, but at its core, this is supposed to be a quick and dirty game. It wasn't supposed to be a simulation. Number 3, great roster. This game has dozens upon dozens of supplements available for it, and most of them, if not all of them, can still be found online today. Between the different specific supplements on the X-Men, the Avengers, X-Forces, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and Doctor Doom, as well as the great Marvel Gamer's Guide to the Galaxy series, you are going to be able to find hundreds upon hundreds of different roster entries for this system, not to mention all of the ones that were in Dragon Magazine. So if you are looking for any sort of hero that was around in the 80s or early 90s, they are going to be represented in this game, probably in multiple variations. Along with the great library, it would be good to mention that there is also an excellent free retro clone that you can use to play the system and use some of those materials without dropping a dime on this game. Now the bad. Number 1, advancement limitations. This system uses karma to uses an experience point pool to enhance your ability scores and your powers, but in practice, it just takes so much karma to do anything meaningful that in my games, it's always been a bit hand-wavy how your characters can advance. Maybe I'm just a bad GM. That's okay. You can tell me that in the comments too. But I felt like the karma system for advancement was not what I was looking for in my games, at least. Number 2, typos galore. As I read through these books, I found that I was absolutely spoiled by more modern proofreading and layout. There are also a lot of rules referenced that don't exist in some of these books. That's why there was a lot of errata that was released in Dragon Magazine for this system. That said, I will say that the revised edition of the Marvel Superheroes Basics set actually is very well done for the age, and when I play, that is the one that I typically use today, though I will pull some options from the advanced set as well. Number 3, the roster's outdated. If you're watching this channel, you're probably an old guy like me, so you're looking for a roster that is from your childhood, the 80s and 90s, and that's okay. But if you are, for some reason, wanting to have an updated roster, you're going to have to look to some fan creations because this game has been out of print since the mid-90s. So if you want the characters of your childhood, they're here. If you want the characters of the MCU,
that's not going to happen.
You're going to have to look somewhere else. Coming in at number 3, this is the DC Heroes RPG created by Mayfair Games and designed by Greg Gordon. This game came out about the same time as the Marvel RPG, and both use D10s, but that's about where the similarities end. There were 3 editions of this, as well as a separate Batman RPG that uses the same system, and there was a successful Kickstarter last fall to re-release most of the products in this line. That should make this a little bit more easy to pick up in the near future. I have done a separate video on the DC Heroes RPG, and if you want to see more about that, check out the other video here on the channel. That said, let's get into the good and the bad. First, the good. Number 1, the best roster of any superheroes RPG ever. Okay, obviously that is very subjective. I am a DC Heroes fanboy, so you tell me that you can give me the stats for Lobo, Doomsday, and Batman, I'm all in. But in all seriousness, because of the system that they use, the Meg system, the heroes in these books are much more detailed than any other superheroes RPG that I'm willing to play. That's right, I'm not including champions in here. The core rules sets for each of the editions have generous rosters themselves, but then there were also the Who's Who in the DC Universe, volumes 1 through 3, as well as numerous supplements for the game line that had all sorts of different variations of the heroes pre- and post-Crisis storyline. Because the system was meant to be a simulation, the numbers are going to cover a very wide scale of different power levels for the heroes and villains. Number 2, bound difficulties. So because of the exponential system, meaning that every rank is twice as powerful as the prior rank, it keeps the numbers fairly bound. You don't get into hundreds or thousands of points that you have to track. Usually everything from Jimmy Olsen to Superman is going to be between 0 and 25. Superman pretty well tops out at 25. And everything in between is going to be covered therein. This makes it so you can have some reasonable interactions between different power levels of characters and villains, and that is going to create a better comic book accurate experience at the table, in my opinion. Number 3, universal measurement. Everything in the DC Heroes RPG is measured in APs, action points. Because everything is measured with the same unit, you can translate that across different types of measurement to have some very handy formulas at the table for determining range, distance, time, all sorts of different things with the AP system. It's not world accurate, but it's close enough, and it gives you tools as a GM to keep the game moving along swiftly and still somewhat realistically. Now the bad. Number 1, availability. Some of these books have been out of print for long enough, and they're still popular enough that they've gotten quite expensive. That said, with the Kickstarter I mentioned earlier, hopefully that's going to come down a little. Unfortunately, as of right now, still no PDFs of this game system. Apparently, as I understand it, Warner Brothers owns the rights to this game. Mayfair, who doesn't exist any longer, never owned the rights to this game, even though they published it and designed it. So that all reverted back to Warner Brothers, which makes licensing of this game probably a nightmare, I would imagine, and I praise Cryptozoic for going through the trouble to get the reprints done. Hopefully, if that goes well, there will be more to come. Number 2, 2-chart resolution. I know a lot of people are very unhappy with having to look at 2 different charts to figure out what happens whenever they try to do an action. For me, it's not a big deal. You're still making one roll, but I know that's going to be an issue for some people. If you want to see more about how that action resolution works, check out my other video for DC Heroes, but I do know that some people have mentioned that that is a no-go for them. Number 3, street level play. This game works great at Batman level and above. Unfortunately, when you get into the Jim Gordons of the world, it becomes quite difficult to represent them with any accuracy on the table because the range in what those power levels are covers virtually all of the normies. So the differences between a Jim Gordon and a Jimmy Olsen on the stat sheet are going to be pretty negligible because they're including for a world in which Superman exists. That's going to be okay as long as you're not wanting to play the Street Toughs level game. Number 2, probably no surprise for longtime viewers of the channel, I have Savage Worlds, specifically with the Superpowers Companion. Savage Worlds was created by Shane Hensley, and it is a universal system that has a lot of legs. This has been around for a couple of decades now, and it keeps getting better. This is the newest version of the Superpowers Companion, and this is what I'm basing my entry to this list upon. If you want to learn more about the Superpowers Companion, I have a specific video on this channel related to that book. I also have many different videos on the Savage World system as a whole, so if you want to learn more about that, go check those videos out. That said, let's get into the good and the bad. First, the good. Number 1, the flexible system covers many styles. Because Savage Worlds was set up to do any type of game, it's very easy to insert other elements into your Supers game. So you want to do Marvel Zombies or Deceased? Just go ahead and grab the Horror Companion and take a few setting rules, throw them into your game, boom, you're good to go. If you want to do a gritty Howling Commandos style game, no problem. You've got all of the resources at your fingertips. Savage Worlds does a great job of emulating different genres and being able to mix and match. That is a boon for any Supers game. Number 2, universal resolution mechanic. As you've heard me praise this system several times on this channel, I love that I know how I'm going to be successful whether I am jumping across a cliff, trying to hit Hitler in the face as Captain America, or I am trying to catch the falling kitten from the tree as the Flash so that it doesn't become road pizza. Everything's done with the same wild die plus skill die system with Savage Worlds. And that universal resolution mechanic makes teaching and playing this game an absolute breeze, no matter what genre you're playing in. So you can focus more on the story, in the case of superheroes, that's rather important I hear, and less on how everything works in the background. The game gets out of the way so you can have fun. Number 3, the product line. Because Savage Worlds has been in print for a couple of decades now, there are a metric ton of different options available to you. Like I said before, if you are looking for an analogous stat block in this game to something that you want to represent from another IP, it is very easy to do so. Especially in the different companion books, it's very clear that they have tried to give you some very close analogs to other IP related characters and items and objects and things, and they just filed off the serial numbers for you. So if you're looking for something specific, you're not going to have to do a ton of homebrew to make it a reality in your Savage Worlds game. Now the bad. Number 1. There are very high success rates at high power levels in this game. Because the difficulty number is typically a 4, it is going to make many of the tasks menial. Now you have some tools as a GM to help to make this less of an issue, but it is going to be something that bothers a lot of people, that their players are constantly working with raises and never failing at actions. Number 2. While the analogs are great, the roster is obviously just knockoffs. There are going to be no characters that you recognize from your favorite comic book IP. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work, but the roster does cover a lot of the different tropes, just not the specific heroes and villains that you're probably looking for in your Supers game. Number 3. Superpower play adds a layer of complexity to the base Savage Worlds game. Savage Worlds is fast, furious fun. Superpowers adds another mechanic, being the superpower mechanic, which is a little confusing because powers already existed in Savage Worlds pre-superpowers, and that's a whole nother thing. Just suffice it to say that the addition of superpower level play into a Savage Worlds game is going to slow it down a little bit, and it's going to make the character sheet a lot more messy than it was with a standard Savage Worlds game. For me, it's worth the effort and it's worth the mess, but it's something that I should let you know about up front.
There's only one spot open right now, so we're gonna have tryouts.
Number 1, Sentinel Comics RPG, and I gotta tell you, this one caught me by surprise when I first found it. I am not a Sentinels of the Multiverse card game fan. It's fine, it's just not my favorite. And when I picked it up, it was just based purely upon the fact that one of the lead designers was Cam Banks, who was involved with the Margaret Weis Marvel Super Heroic role-playing game. And I liked that system, and I wanted to see what he did with this. Well, I was definitely not disappointed at all. The Sentinel Comics RPG has been around for a few years now, and it is still in print. You can still pick this up quite easily, but it is not widely available. It doesn't seem like all of the game stores are carrying this anymore. It has a niche market, but I think you should be part of that niche if you like superheroes RPGs. I should note too that while this is set in the Sentinels of the Multiverse world and galaxy, this system is incredibly flexible, and I've considered using it for things like medieval games or modern games that have nothing to do with superheroes, because the system just works so well and seamlessly. That being said, let's get into the good and the bad of the Sentinel Comics RPG. First, the good. Number 1, encourages creative play. Because the dice resolution mechanic for Sentinel Comics RPG combines 1 power die plus 1 quality die plus whatever your status die is, it makes players have to justify why they want to use the better dice in their character sheet. For example, if I have a creativity quality that's better than my ranged combat, but I want to use my cold ray to try to attack the enemy, and I want to use the best possible dice that I have, then I might have to say to my GM, so I want to freeze the ground on the enemy behind him and try to attack him with his ally by making him fall into the enemy I'm aiming at. Therefore, I'm going to use my creativity die. That is an example of the kind of play that you get with Sentinels. And in practice, I found that some of my players that struggled with role-playing in any other system that I've used before and since had no problem trying to come up with justifications to use those better dice in Sentinel Comics RPG. Number 2, brilliant multi-level random character generation. The Sentinel Comics RPG random character generator is fantastic because while it's random, it still gives you 2 to 3 choices on each step based upon the dice you roll. So while it does lead you down a path, it doesn't force you down a specific endpoint. Whenever I was creating characters in the Sentinel Comics RPG, I always felt like I could see them on the pages of my favorite comic books, and I always used the random character creation method. I never just picked it from scratch. It was a great tool to create a very lived-in world with comic book characters. Number 3, beautiful layout and illustration. The Sentinel Comics RPG has wonderful panels, and the pages are all laid out with the same care that the cover has. Everything looks very much at home in a comic book. And because they took that extra step, that extra effort, it's easy to immerse yourself in this world, even if, like you have no interest in the Sentinels of the Multiverse card game. And now the bad. The setting for Sentinel Comics is pretty campy. It's Silver Age style comic books. It's all over the top. All the tropes are there. And they're unashamedly presenting this campy style. That's not to say you can't adjust it to your own taste, but it's there and it's in the background, and that might be a problem for some groups. Number 2, limited product line. For whatever reason, Sentinel Comics RPG did not take off like I believe it should have, so there are only a few releases for this. They're all good, but you're not going to find an established and well-crafted line that has dozens upon dozens of releases. Number 3, abstracted mechanics. This is going to be a big one for a lot of groups. The way that resolutions work in Sentinel Comics is very much an abstraction that allows for players to describe in detail what they do, but the mechanics themselves don't give you the details of what exactly happens. You get your result, and then you tell the GM and the rest of the group what happened at the table, and some players are going to balk at this because it's not that simulationist style where you get the success and it gives you a very specific description of what that looks like. No, you're supposed to provide the description of what that looks like in this system. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 comic book RPG systems. You may not agree with my list, but I hope that you found something in there that you liked. I know there's going to be some folks that are disappointed I didn't talk about systems like Champions, which I played when I was a kid, but that was a traumatic experience for me that I don't want to revisit again. There are also newer systems like Icons and Ascendant. There's lots of different super systems out there. But these are the 5 that I enjoy the most and that I think have the most legs for a superheroes game. But I'd love to hear your opinions on these games and the ones that you think should have been on the list. So until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless. Look at these absolute legend D20 members. Dengar the Mighty, Drake, Blue Rose Lion, and Mike the Hammer. Special thanks to Acene Dean.